Just a quick edit was found in the
I would just go ahead.
work on
Put it-
4 complex initiatives together from the census to COVID-19 to rental assistance to 3 primary critical initiatives that, and full security. Thank you. Most of them supported by some of you. It is very close. Thank you. Leila, take us home, please.
I want to make sure that we're leaving. If you can't hear me, I tend to speak quietly, so just to bring it up my aisle and try and yell. It's not appropriate unless for my children. So, as my colleagues referred to, we have taken on 4 major initiatives, and I want to talk about. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about some of the lessons that we learned, because we have all been working independently in a small organization, but when we came together, I'm going to put this right in front of my face, and it's a reminder, when we came together, what we started to realize is there's some real underdeveloped capital in the community, and that capital comes in the form of small, grassroots organizations that maybe they're not formed as 501c3s, right? They don't have operating budgets. They don't have a lot of the infrastructure that some of the bigger organizations, and that is true of Centro. Thank you, Michiko, for walking me through that. I appreciate you. But we came together to try to support one another in that process, and there was a lot of information exchange. And through that, what we started to find too was there was also community exchange. We could call each other. We had food delivery issues where there were members of the community that did not want to reach out to Africa or MCFS for help because they knew everybody. But they could call me. Vice versa, I could send my community down here. And it became a real sharing of resources and exchange that was really, really critical. But we also really aimed to develop those smaller organizations, those smaller groups, and arm them as best we could with the resources they needed to start to figure out, hey, do we want to formalize this? How do we want to structure this? How do we do these things? And, everyone's making different decisions, but we found out a few key elements. One is the pre-existing relationship with the immigrant community is critical. It has been virtually impossible for us to impose ourselves on any community. If I walked in to a Liberian community organization tomorrow and said, I have a service, right? It's not going to have the same impact as folks knowing, hey, you are part of this community, we're going to work together. So those pre-existing relationships are what allowed us to move forward. So when everything shut down and we got the phone calls from our community, we were in a position to continue doing the work because we had that relationship. The timeline of services and the timeline of interventions is different in immigrant communities. It takes longer. And this is something that we really wanted to highlight because oftentimes, right, we say, okay, we'll do this in 6 months, or we'll do this in a year. At the end of 6 months, people are calling us, hey, we want to do, whatever the services that you're offering, we want it now. It's like, no, but we started 5 months ago. It takes longer to implement services. It takes longer to offer these in the immigrant community. And it's really, really critical that those of us who are working in the community have the flexibility to call up and say, okay, so now I have this other thing, or this has changed, because there's no roadmap. One of the other things that we found is a lot of the information that we have on who the immigrant community is inaccurate. Just putting it bluntly, right? And so we had this issue recently. We looked at the census data. Ms. Kamara kindly pulled a lot of data together, and I looked at it and I said, there's actually, there are definitely Mexicans in Upper Darby, but it's not the largest community. But the census data says it is. But I assure you that it's not, right? It's the Guatemalan and Honduran community and the Ecuadorian community are really the largest. in this area. So what we know as a grassroots organization sometimes differs from what's documented. The school district, I think, do a pretty good job of knowing where folks are from, because it has to. But when we start to look at who folks are and how we're categorizing things, let's think about what are we missing? You know, what aren't we being told? Because of the way these questionnaires and the way the information is collected is not always accurate or reflective, I guess, of what the community is really comprised of. Another thing that we found is that collective work is critical. And for me, this is it was a life lesson, you know, when I had to close my mouth, which I'm actually not very good at doing. I talk a lot, right? And my colleagues were like, you just sit there and you listen. And the power that came out of making that space for folks who are not often engaged in the conversation was remarkable. The information, the ideas, the power of those conversations, I think has really, really shaped this collective into something very meaningful. And for me, as an organization director, I now know who I can go to and get support from. If I'm struggling with thing one, I would go to Dr. Eddie. If I'm struggling with another thing, I would go to Ms. Tamara. And this is how we operate, and it's been absolutely critical. The ability to work across communities has allowed us to get to communities that you can't find. One of the things that's distinctive about Upper Darby is how many hidden families there are. And I say this as someone who goes into households, and my colleagues will probably agree with me. You go into a household, and you may see the 4 people that are on the list. You don't know who's subletting. You know, there are a lot of multi-generational, multi-family households. People hide within the community because they need to, right? They need to not, because being undocumented in this country is extremely difficult. And it has allowed them to survive economically in a way that is not possible in other places. But to get to those folks, to get to those communities, is very, very difficult. One example, we have a huge Guatemalan population here in Upper Darby. But not everyone can speak Spanish, right? There are at least 4 major language groups from Guatemala that are represented. How you get to those folks, how you talk to those folks, how you find where they live, and offer things to them, we need each other to be able to do that. It's not, we can't just hang a sign. It's just not possible. Okay, hurry up. Yes, I do appreciate it. So, we appreciate each other. Thank you. So, the other thing is I want to highlight, we tend to think about the immigrant community as a difficult community to access. But I really want to talk about the fact that it's a community that comes to you with an amazing amount of strength and power. Just the economic power alone is tremendous. So I challenge you, I don't know if part of the tour is walking up Garrett Road at all. Driving. Okay. So if you just take Garrett Road, you will see any amount of different stores, restaurants, right? And actually tomorrow, tomorrow's the international, we have a table, so I should know, is the International Festival. You will see people represented from all over the world. That is an economic driver, and please don't, underestimate that power. But folks are also looking out for each other. I could give you many, many examples. During COVID, unfortunately, we lost many people in the community. And by the time I got the call, so-and-so passed away, the community had already gathered all the money needed to send the remains back. I mean, within 48 hours. The collective power of the community is tremendous. So we have discovered that there are many best practices that are critical to taking voting out in individual efforts. So one of those is the flower huts, which is something that I've learned about through this process, right? I know a lot about how folks in the Latinx community lend money to one another. That's also really critical to understand. And so our ability to converse and centralize this knowledge has been extremely helpful. But the needs of the community are different. And there is a lot of power in the community, but how we capitalize on that, how we help people access what they need, looks different. And one perfect example is we have, and Dr. Eddie talked about it, we have tons of people who are coming with graduate degrees, nursing degrees. I know probably at least 15 physicians from Venezuela who cannot practice. How do we harness that? How do we help these folks who are such a driver, right? And how do we engage them in a way that helps them to move forward, right? And so it's critical that we figure out where those barriers are, where those doors are, and then we start to open them. So with that, I'm going to wrap up because we want to have time for questions.
Mr. Kaplan is going to be in the center of you with the microphone. We're going to give as much time for questions. Mr. Daniel Lender, a member of the CIC representing Rise and Hope for Change, is joining us. You heard Linda talk about not only the lessons learned, but what are the gaps, what are the barriers, what are the strengths of the diverse immigrant community here. We hope that we have given you some information that you can take with you. We do have, that we will be giving out at the end, a data snapshot. This was done several years ago by the Denver Valley Radio Planning Commission, sort of updated. Focus on Upper Derby. 3 communities with high numbers of foreign-born residents. You can see Upper Derby highlighted. We want you to take this home with you. As Layla said, it's not 100% correct. You look at this, it says we have a 19.5% foreign-born. We're actually 25% or more. It says also that Mexico is one of the leading countries of immigrants in Abu Dhabi. What is missing is immigrants from Guatemala and immigrants also from Honduras. And so we certainly hope that you enjoy it. In reading it, this is also quickly a 2-pager that you can take with you. Our talking point. If we knew if we had given it to you, you wouldn't be paying any attention. We kept it. All right, thank you again for your time and listening to us. And Mr. Kaplan, let's go Palabra style right now. Palabra conversation, if we may.
Thank you, Ms. Kay. If anybody would like to share your thoughts, what you know about Upper Darby, what you thought you knew about Upper Darby, here's a great opportunity.
Mr. Kaplan, may I interrupt for 1
Yes,
second?
please.
I would not be a Liberian if I did not do this. In this space is our Honorable Mayor, Barbara Ann Kiefer, and I want to introduce her. Madam Mayor. Face Reggiani.
We have plenty of time for conversation, so.
And I will just highlight that if you have a question, all of your colleagues probably have it too. So please do not be shy.
Yes, we encourage that.